Good morning, everyone, to the Mashpee Men's Club. Thank you all for coming out on this really cold morning. It's nice to see everybody. We begin each of our meetings with a salute to the flag. Can you pull that out? And Pete Jackson is going to do us the honor of leading us today. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Personal biography of the gentleman, but Tom Keyes was here a number of years before COVID. It goes back maybe 10 or 11 years anyway, to talk about obtaining permission from his wife to buy a house that had been sitting in Sandwich unoccupied for several years. And what they found is they began to renovate it. This is a picture of the house today, I guess.
No, that's prior.
That was the prior, but I thought it doesn't have the shutters now, if my recollection is correct. At any rate, it was a fabulous talk. They found out that the original part of this house goes back to something like 1650. And in that, they realized that the old cooking fireplace in the kitchen didn't have its original hearth because the house had been moved to be close to the road. So they began looking where the old spot was, and it wasn't hard to find that the house had been up near the pond there in Sandwich. And there was the hearthstone. So then when they moved that down to where it belonged, they, just at the end of his experience at the time of his talk, they decided to do some digging there, careful digging. And I think that's what we're going to hear the follow-up today about the archaeological exploration, how carefully it was done, who was involved, and his particular idea that this should be available to the public, not in some archaeologist's bottom drawer at a laboratory. And that's what we'd love to hear about. Tom, former commissioner of the Cape Cod Commission, and now independent businessman. I turn it over to Tom Keyes.
Excellent, thank you. Can everybody hear me? Microphone or no? My wife says I'm loud. Yeah, Berkeley, thank you for contacting me. About a month and a half ago, Berkeley contacted me out of the blue and says, haven't talked to you in about 8 to 10 years. I went, okay, let's go back. He wanted an update. And a lot has changed since we started this. And I'll give you a brief how we got here and then the exciting things about what the updates are. 2010, Berkeley rightfully said, I asked permission of my wife to look at an old house. We got married in 96. We built a house in East Sandwich. I get bored easily. I start looking at houses in downtown, and this was available. No one lived in it for 15 years. Paint was peeling in off the walls. It was in rough condition. Eventually, I told my wife while I was looking at it, and I'm still in the big bed, so it worked out. We're good. We did purchase the house and did a renovation. This is how the house looked when we bought it. It's charming, a shuttered white cape in downtown Sandwich. And when we took the ceiling down upstairs, because the upstairs ceiling was 6'1", I'm 6'1". So my head's rubbing the entire upstairs of the house, but I knew we could gain some space if we take the false ceiling down. And when we did, the contractor sent me this picture saying there's something wrong because the house we bought was an 1817 colonial, but that's all hand-hewn beams. And they weren't hand-hewn beams with an adze back in 1817. They had plenty enough saws to do it the right way. So then we move forward and we start looking. Remember the old heat grates in the floors so the bottom floor heat can come up? This had a heat grate in the floor, allowing the heat going from the firebox downstairs to the second floor. And when we opened it up and looked inside, there's the hand-hewn beams for the story downstairs. Remember, this was the upstairs, now this is the downstairs, and it's blackened. Didn't fully understand why it was blackened yet, thinking maybe there was a fire or something going on. So a local archaeologist named David Wheelock, he comes over, and I don't know him from Adam. We go up into the attic, and he starts looking around, and he says, oh, it's all still here, the purlins, and he says, I would bet this house is at least 1650. Well, good thing I was sitting down, because I'm about to restore this house. And I thought it was a 200-year-old piece of garbage. Now it's getting closer to 400 years old, and it's a post and beam house. Add some challenges. Again, still in the big bed. Still worked out, just cost a little more. But I don't know if you can see in the picture, but there's a hole right here, a little pass. Because this is the house this way, looking towards the street. And then there's another gable end going out the back over the bathroom in a second addition, and that's the access in. And when you stick your head inside, you just stick in, you start seeing shingles. So when they put that addition on the back, they just nailed it on top of the shingles that were already there. And now David Wheelock says, I've never seen original shakes survive. He goes, these are ferociously old shakes still there. He goes, you have a Smithsonian piece sitting in your attic that no one will ever see, because it's hard to even get in there. So the original shingles are still on, I don't want to call them original, very old shingles are still on the older part of the house. Also in the front of the house, downstairs over the front door, we were taking some, there's all kinds of things that had to be removed. And we found original, it's called federal corn paper over the front door. It was a swag, and there's a couple of pictures here you'll see, 2 and 3. It's ornate, it's yellow. It's a swag on the beam. In the 17th century and 18th century, people liked a lot of color because everything was wood. So there was a lot of colors. It was almost like the 60s. There was a lot of color in a lot of these houses. And so we took pictures of this and sent it over to the Plymouth Antiquarium, and I got a call within seconds. Where are you? So we're in Sandwich. Well, they told us that was the federal corn paper, and they have an example of it, but with the ones that they have, the green's gone, because through sun, it just fades over time. This has been encapsulated for so long, it's the only one they know that still has the yellow and the green intact. So now over my front door downstairs, we had to do this little cutout so you can, and it's still shaded so it won't get faded. I have that in the house, because why wouldn't you? Upstairs, this was that first picture that I showed you with the whitewash ceiling. The walls were, as you can see, the boards are going up around the outside of the house. 17th century houses had wide, thick pine boards going up that framed the inside of the corner post, the what you call a gunstock post and beams, and that would be structural. There was no insulation. It was just plastered, and then they put a false wall inside the house. So they had an airlock. They put a wall inside later on in its time to try to get a little more retention of heat. Now, it really doesn't do much when you do that. If you've ever been in a house that has false walls and just an airlock, all it's keeping is the wind off you. It doesn't do much. So we made the decision to let's expose the gunstock post and the wind braces, which were covered up. None of these posts you could see when we bought the house. That's why it looked like it was 1817. Everything was plastered over with false walls. Now, this is the second story of the house, and the wind braces are going down. Now, typically when you're doing a two-story construction, the wind braces would go up. Now, I wouldn't say typically, almost always they'd go up. That means this was added secondarily to the original house, which would have been a one-room, 12 by 18, with an attic or a garret over it. So that obviously the garret was lifted, and they put this second one on with wind braces going down, because that's how you have to do it when you're putting an addition on. So that tells us there's some activity going on here. This is the only picture of the barn that was on the property. This is the 1886 bird's eye view. They did those in a lot of the towns in Massachusetts, and they're actually very well depicted. They did a really good job of, this is the entire downtown of Sandwich. I zoomed in on it, and this is my house here. It was a half colonial, so it was 2 windows and a door and the second floor. My house was extended to a full colonial in 1928 when the Dearborns bought it. So it was, this house has had a lot of, I think it's going to go up to 9 additions on the original house. Just charming things. In the room that I call the office, the front room, you can't see it clearly here, but they carved different heights of children over time. And we really didn't want to paint over that. It's just, you know, it's V. Deacus, 1876. So, I mean, my wife and I said, it looks weird, but don't paint it. So we just kind of left it exposed. Again, the house has to tell a story. So this is the downstairs room. Those are the beams. It was a Harlequin look. And the Harlequin was a whitewash between blackened beams, which was very popular in the 17th century. A lot of it was still there. So when we restored the room, we brought it back to the Harlequin black beams and white. This is just a couple of quick shots of what it looks like now, when we first did it in 2011. But now, that's the room I was just showing you. This would have been the back corner of the house. So there's a gunstock post back here. This was the one room, 12 by 18, and then additions and additions. There was a wall here before they put this addition on, and I love this story. So in this corner, there's a gunstock post. You know, the beam gunstock post in the corner. On the other side of this room addition, there's a boxed-in piece of wood that we opened up, and it's a tree. Literally a tree with bark that they cut the branches off. That's holding up the backside. So in 1928, when the Dearborns bought the house, and they put this whole living room addition on the side, they took this wall off to open it up. Well, they put a bathroom up above here, so they put an I-beam on it, which makes sense. You want an I-beam for, you know, for bathtubs and all. So you have a gunstock post, an I-beam, and a tree holding up the house. If it wasn't for a couple of light bulbs, nothing meets code in my house. That's just the way it is. And this is just the living room that was put on, and then the master was above it. So that's that same corner. There's a story about how the house is called the Lincoln House, but I'm going to burn up all the time talking about that one. It was a woman that bought the house in 1827 who was portrayed herself as Caucasian, but she was African American, and she had a baby who was dark-skinned, was sent to Massachusetts, and then she came back up from the Carolinas and found her son and bought this house after she sold the grocery store. It's a whole story. It's an amazing story. And then over the front door, her son put a carving, a high-relief carving over the front door to memorialize the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. That's why they call it the Lincoln House. So there's a lot of stories going on with this place. So then after we had it, this house wouldn't have had shutters on it. 17th century and early 18th century, they didn't have shutters on the outside, and you could tell by the placement of the windows that it wouldn't have been built with the intention of having shutters. So we took them off. It looked a little more appropriate. Let's see, a nice one. This is how it looks now. This is today. So we, with a lot of work, took the paint off of it. We brought it back to a natural state with painted corners and windows. This is how it sits. Now we're finally happy with it. We couldn't get paint to stay on it anyway. It would come off like saran wrap. Oh gosh, it was awful. Couldn't get it to stick, so better off, let's strip it down bare. So now it's just a natural wood house, and the maintenance went down dramatically. So it was a good move. Everybody should do that. So now here we are. That was pre-COVID when I came and talked to all of you. We did some archaeology around the house, and we found out that the house was moved here around 1800, hence why they thought it was an 1817 colonial. All the material culture in the ground was around 1800 to today. There was nothing pre, so no nails, no coins, no items, no thimbles, nothing's in the ground. So we had 2 other archaeologists working with us, and he asked, who owns that grassy knoll out back? Well, we do. It's the next lot over. They tested it, and instantly they started finding native artifacts, and eventually they found the hearth. Well, that's exciting. And at that point, we started the North Atlantic Archaeological Collaborative, which is a 501c3 educational nonprofit, and we've brought endless amount of students out there. Just hundreds and hundreds of students that work with the archaeologists. I'll pass these around. That's the site. There's pictures of the students. That's my daughter. And if you want to just pass those around. It's been a great time teaching archaeology. So when we're digging out there to expose where the house originally came from, we're not just doing it to put everything in a box. We want students out there. 7th and 8th grade is our target. If 25 out there digging with archaeologists yelling at them, they got to do it right, and identifying what they found, and everybody finds something great every single time. It's a great experience. This went on for years, then COVID hit. All the schools had to back off, obviously. And I guess you call her my administrator, Agatha Bodwell, who was doing a lot of the stuff while I'm out making money, she would work with the schools and get things set up, so then I would teach the classes. She moved to the Carolinas, so it's been kind of dormant for a while. Now that it's dormant, it gave me an opportunity to go after an area that was very sensitive, which is we found the cellar hole. So we found, well, coincidentally, a 12 by 18 foundation. Unfortunately, when you move a house, you have a big hole in the ground, you backfill with all kinds of rock and debris. So it wasn't anything you could put students in, and it was very difficult to dig. So for the last few years, very slowly, we've been bringing this, I guess, quarry down to the bottom. And just this summer, we got to the bottom floor. Took a long time to get there. And this is what we found. It's an ugly picture, but bear with me. Foundation running all the way around and back. All hand done, dry laid, nothing holding it together but time and gravity. And we've found some amazing items in there. A lot of native artifacts came out of the cellar hole. And as small as this looks, it's about, I'm going to say about 5.5 feet tall, and then it would have been higher than that because a lot of it's fallen in. So it's quite large. It's a large area. And this side, we found a lot more native artifacts than this side. And if you look at the picture, it tells its own story. These rocks here, I think if 4 of us got together, we couldn't pick one up. They're massive. I mean, I'm 2 guys, we have to roll these out of the way because they're in the middle. All of these over here, I could pick up a couple at a time. So half the foundation is small, what I call river rock, or small rock, or gathered rock. These are all flattened. These are quarried. So it looks like there's 2 builds here, because otherwise, why would you do that? If at a minimum, if you were going to build it all at once, you'd put the larger stones on the bottom, and then build up. But no, half of it is all rocks that you could gather. All right, well, there's no one here to ask. We're looking at pre-1650. You got to start coming up with questions in your own mind to which there's no answer. The next scoop of dirt might give you a closer answer or give you another anecdote, but you have to start figuring out what happened here, why. So if this is 12 by 18, half is done with very small rocks. All right, so it's a small cellar hole, but still deep. Well, if it was a root cellar, typically root cellars were trapdoor where you could reach down and get turnips or things that you wanted to stay cooler. But this is deep. So is it a root cellar or is it an original housing? Don't know yet. So there's a lot to understand. So I'm an auditor and I don't sleep at night. I read. And we found out that this property was Thomas Toby's original property. So the Toby Association in the United States is massive, massive association. They're all very proud to be Tobys, and they all come to, I am the ancestor of this, to the great-great-great-great-grandfather, Thomas Toby. Nobody knows where he came from. He didn't come on the Abigail, didn't come on over on the Mayflower. He wasn't one of the 10 men from Saugus that came down and founded Sandwich in 1637. Well, where did he come from? All right, 1637, Sandwich becomes a town. It's now Plymouth Colony allowed these people to settle here. Okay, they divide the land amongst themselves because they're the proprietors. This is downtown Sandwich, right near the Hoxie House, right down by it's right on the river. It used to be a river before it was a pond, and it leads right out to the Great Marsh. Well, they wouldn't let somebody that showed up years later have this land. That would have been gobbled up immediately. Why is it already Toby property? And come to find out, my neighbors are Tobys. Across the street was Tobys. It goes all the way down the road. It's all Toby. And you go, what's going on here? Nobody knows where he came from, and he got all the good land? Makes no sense. So I start digging deeper and deeper and deeper. And I find a document that shows that there was Thomas Toby at town meeting in 1640, I don't know, 44, 46, whatever the date is. But further down, in attendance at town meeting was the widow Knott, Thomas Toby's mother-in-law, and it says the two daughters of Thomas Toby Sr. Well, the Thomas Toby that we've been talking about didn't have any daughters. Is this Thomas Toby's dad that came here first? Well, I start digging further and I find a boat called the Nachin. The Nachin left England in 1616 and went to Monhegan Island off the coast of Maine. Because at that point, all the cod fishing, that's where the money was. It was all going back to England. Huge industry. Boats were going back and forth. Of course, they didn't stay on land because there was still a problem with the native inhabitants. So they would stay on Monhegan Island, which was far enough out where you really couldn't row out to it. And that was kind of like their home port for these large ships catching cod. Thomas Toby was on the Nachin in 1616. Okay. The Nachin, there was Captain Brown. Captain Brown thought there was going to be a mutiny and left his crew, ready, and this is his words, left his crew on the shores, which was not Monhegan Island, which is on the shores, to stay the winter with the savages in their wigwams. And he took the boat and left, and he wrecked it off of Long Island. And then he got into a bar fight and got killed. Oh. So now these guys are spending the winter, as they say, in the wigwams. All right. I'm going to just interject. Well, you got a bunch of men spending the winter in the wigwams. And what are men like? What else?
Women.
Thank you. Not a lot of English women running around at that time. So my question is, did Thomas Toby fall in love? And did he take a bride? And if he has children, guess what? In that time, he can't go back. Not going back to England. Admiral Smith, who did the first mapping of Cape Cod and the bay, He went to Monhegan Island in 1616, and they took a shallop and they went all the way down the coast of what we call now Massachusetts, all the way to the tip of Provincetown, and mapped every tributary. They went to all the inlets, and that's actually what the Pilgrims first used to find out where they were, but they did that mapping with a crew. Don't know if Thomas Tobey was on that crew, but he went with a small crew and they mapped it. They would have mapped right behind my house, because at that point, Great Harbor, where the boardwalk is, the fresh water was what they call navigable, because you could drag a shallop up it. It would have come right behind my house. And nobody in the 17th century wanted to live on the shores. They were smarter than us now. They went a little more inland for storm reasons. Is that why this is here? We don't know. So now you go, all right, so what have you found when you were digging around this? Right up in this area here on top, we find a spoon, what's called a seal-top spoon. I have it here for you all to see. It's kind of fun. A seal-top spoon from the late 1500s. Well, why is that there? Don't know. Doesn't make sense. If we founded this in 1637, nobody's walking around with 40, 50-year-old spoons. We also find a purple amethyst, which purple amethyst in the 17th century was worth more than diamonds at the time. We've found tons of them now, and now they're very pretty, but they're not huge value. But at that point, they were massive value. And the only place you found those was what we now call roughly the border of Canada and Maine. That was where the amethysts were found, and the natives were using them as healing stones. Why is that here? There weren't amethysts on Cape Cod. Then you start looking at all the other artifacts that we have that are starting to tell a story of pre-1650. You're seeing a lot of native artifacts that we haven't seen elsewhere in the site, a lot of personal artifacts, personal use artifacts. You're saying, why would these all be here? I'm asking you, because no one can give me an answer. So I'm trying to find out what happened. This site is very old. We sent a lot of this evidence down to an archaeologist down at Flowerdew, and this archaeologist says, you found an older house. Now, if you look at those pictures I sent, you saw the overview, and you can see a hearth, the brick hearth. Well, that's the 1650. He says, this is older than 1650. Well, we're kind of running out of dates, folks. So where are we? What have we found? What's the story here? Is this Thomas Tobey Sr.'s original house? I don't know yet. I'm an auditor, and what I do is I always try to dispel the facts in front of me. And if you can't dispel them through research, then the facts will kind of stand on their own, although you can't put a check mark saying this is actual fact, but I can certainly give you a list of 100 things I tried to make that not be true. And I can't yet find what I said not to be true. And I'm looking, and I have other people looking. So where does this leave me? I had a great big hole in the ground. I have tens of thousands of artifacts, literally, tens of thousands of artifacts. Musket balls, native points, you name it, thimbles that you'd think your grandmother just fell out of your grandmother's sewing kit. A ton of artifacts. But artifacts are fantastic, but we always say, once you take it out of the ground, it doesn't have any value from an archaeological standpoint. It's where it was, why it was there, and what was it next to. For instance, and I'm no offense to anyone that has a metal detector, but metal detector people get in trouble when archaeologists are around, because they'll beep, beep, beep. They'll find a musket ball because it'll pick up the lead. Fantastic piece, musket ball, wonderful. 4, 5, 10 inches over, there could have been a skull with the same size hole in it. Now you got a story. So in archaeology, we methodically scrape all the way down, and we relate all the artifacts to the other artifacts, and they tell the story. If you want to get humbled really quick, you guess in archaeology, because the next scoop is going to tell you you were wrong, and that happens a lot. So you have to be methodical. So we started this archaeological journey in 2000, I'm going to say it really started in 2013. And now here we are, 2026. We finally got to the bottom of the cellar hole. This is interesting. The older section, right down here, the bottom is very silty sand. So obviously when they built this, they put a sand bed down for drainage and making sure that it won't be rot. It's very well used and broken. That is a 3,500-year-old axe. This would have been the point here. This is the pommel. They would have put the, so this is how they would, why is there a 3,500-year-old axe in the bottom of a cellar hole? I don't know. They were used forever until they obviously got to this decrepit state. But we have an axe. We have an effigy. Now, when we first saw this, we thought it was a plummet, which would have been a net weight. You would put all these rocks hanging underneath your nets. When you cast them across the river and the fish would come into it, it would hold the net in place, gather the fish, we're eating. Well, they were very good at making plummets, and they were perfect. They would take another rock and peck a rock to make them perfect. Well, this one isn't perfect. Matter of fact, it's quite not perfect. It's flat in the front, it's pointed in the back, it's blackened, and it's got an eyeball. It's a duck. So I brought that to a prehistoric archaeologist, and he goes, that's an effigy. I doubt it's a toy, because it would have taken too long to make, but what's the effigy for? Is it to ward off bad spirits in a hunt? Who knows what it's for? But we have a duck effigy, and he says, I've never seen one before. A lot of native artifacts are in the ground, some better than others, some just broken shards, because in archaeology, we sift through broken shards. This is interesting. It's a rock. You really can't break it. It's just a rock. And you would think that, oh, you dig that out of the ground, you give it a toss. Well, you take a look at it, and you'd have to see it. I'd have to hand it around, and I have no problem doing so. Right in the middle, it's a six-pointed star. He's carved into the middle of it, as if it's to say, this is mine, because it holds perfectly for knapping. And you can see all of the wear mark. So this was a working tool for knapping of the stones. It fits fantastic. And someone put a star on there, so probably their brother didn't steal it. And again, that's very unique when you're looking for artifacts. Oh boy, that was a good one I wanted to show you guys. This came out, this is charming. And I have no problem handing these around. Again, everything in the ground has been there for hundreds of years. You're not gonna break it. And most of them are already broken. This here, really neat. Still articulates, and you can hand that around. I've no problem with all of you touching it.
Did you ever find more on Toby the Senior?
That's where I'm going. That piece there it's called a cauldrick. It's a buckle, but it's a cauldrick buckle that would hang about here on your chest, and it would be a leather strap for holding your sword. It's a cauldrick buckle. Those are like 1620 to, I think around 1660 they stopped using the cauldrick buckle, but it's in perfect shape. It's an absolutely beautiful condition. Again, the materials that they used didn't rot. Thomas Toby, Sr., driving me crazy. My daughter is studying over in Ireland, and I'll be going to Ireland in April to visit her. Hopefully, I'll be able to leap over to England and see if there's any sources that I can get with Thomas Toby Sr. I want to know, did he ever go back? The nation wrecked. I hear that a lot of the men were gathered up to bring back, obviously, to England. That doesn't mean they all went. Again, we don't know. But the Thomas Toby that came to Sandwich was first reported in 1644. And that was because it's written up in a town meeting. But in 1644, Thomas Toby was giving money for the erection of a meeting house. And you say, okay, he gets married in 1650 at age 25. So if he gets married at age 25 in 1644, why does he have money to give towards the meeting house? He would have been a young man. Now, working hard, sure, but not a lot of people will give money. There's only a few people actually gave something to this house. Well, why the young kid? What about all these old guys running around doing stuff? Obviously established. Don't know where he came from. Did he just come to town with money? Why would he come to town with money at that age? Remember, in the early 1600s, late 1500s, early 1600s, and up for a period of time, cod fishing was one of the biggest industries, or cod sales was one of the biggest industries in England. So they had all the money. Now, these fishermen made a fortune. And side note, you know how you're not supposed to eat meat on Fridays? Who says? King James, who wrote the Bible. Remember he rewrote the Bible? Guess who got all the proceeds from the codfish coming back? Went to the king. Huh. Business is business, folks. Anyway, enjoy your fish. So if Thomas Toby was a fisherman, going back and forth, had a lot of resources, well, then that tells me that he probably stayed. Other things. In the early 17th century, people were using what's called redware. Redware was a locally thrown pottery that they would make all of their bowls and utilitarian items out of. They would fire it. It was called redware because it's very red in its color. And it was basically the Tupperware of the 17th century. You weren't passing it down through the family. It was just meant to be used. Thomas Toby, on this site, he has Portuguese Delft chargers. This is a large charger, very large. Nobody had that in Sandwich. He has jewelry. We've got a gold brooch here. He has beautiful glassware. He has wall-to-wall Germanware, all beautifully glazed blue, wonderful things. So he has all these wonderful things that we're finding all scattered around all over the site that have been broken over time. Yet you go do archaeology anywhere else in town, you never find these things. Well, maybe a piece here or a piece there. So Thomas Toby was a man of means. And then he early on became a selectman in town. He was a raider, which was raiding houses. He then was dividing the bounds between Sandwich and Barnstable. He was then given the role to divide the whales as they washed up on the shore between the native population and the colonists. Why did this guy have all this authority? Makes no sense. The new guy gets all this authority. And I've studied Thomas Toby, the 1650 married to Martha Knott, to death. It's all recorded. Has a huge, huge write-up on him. But it never says what he did. This guy didn't work. This guy didn't have a profession. He just did everything. He was kind of a dandy. What I mean by that is, I have stirrups for riding a horse. Nobody rode horses in the 17th century, folks. Those animals were pack animals. They would put feed, they would put corn, they'd bring it down to the mill. People would walk. They weren't riding horses around. That just was, you'd have to be of real means to have riding horses. Because if you were going to get a horse, you're going to get a working horse. You don't ride those. They drag things. They carry things. We have multiple pairs of stirrups that he had. He's got a very flashy, that I passed it around. Who put that in the pocket? Anyway, a very flashy piece because he had a sword. He was a dandy. He had money. He was showing off. Well, where did he get all this from? Was his father, Thomas Toby Sr., starting off there? I don't know. I'm still working on it. It's still a mystery. My house, we did dendrochronology on the beams of the house, sent them over to Oxford, England, and they confirmed that it's definitely mid-century. It could be a lot older, could be a lot younger, but you have to have enough sapwood to get the exact dates for when the tree was felled. There wasn't enough. But they did definitely confirm that it's 1650-ish, could be earlier, could be, that's where they came up with. We have a lot of pieces to this puzzle that are telling a story. I'm not done yet. And I don't sleep at night because I don't have the answer. But you're really the first people that have expressed this angle to. I've kept it pretty quiet. I did meet with one archaeologist, I'm going to say a couple months back, and we were going over the story. He goes, "You better be quiet, because the descendants of the Mayflower are pretty proud. And this may be a lot earlier than the Mayflower. Maybe not. I don't know. Does anybody have anything for me to help me with this answer? But I will be going to Ireland, and hopefully I could find a source that I can go start digging through their books over in England for a day or two to see if I can find something on this Thomas Toby Sr.
What does the Plymouth Plantation say to you?
Plymouth Plantation, really quick. So I've gone to some functions at Plymouth Plantation, wine and cheese for different events, and my wife and I would walk around down in the lower section, and they had displays, and they had addle-addles. You know, addle-addle is a stone that gets lashed to a stick. It's a native piece so that they could propel spears into woolly mammoths quicker and harder. And my wife says, "Oh, we have 3 of those." I was like, "Shh, we're going to get thrown out." We do have 3 of those. I haven't had a lot of interaction with Plymouth Plantation or Uptuxet, that they call themselves now. We haven't had a lot of interaction. How's that? Outside of the antiquarium, in regards to other aspects. I did get, oh, this is kind of fun. I wish I brought it with me. I am building a long narrative, and it's thick, and it's all my notes and paperwork. In 1638 or 9, because the years changed at that time, there was a complaint back to Plymouth Colony Courts where the church leader in Sandwich complained, what do we do with the people that are already there? Do we have 2 towns? And you go, uh-oh, and I got the answer. It's written up, and I found the answer through the courts, and it says that you must work with them, you cannot abuse them, and there's only 1 town. So in that says there's somebody already living in Sandwich before 1637. Is that Thomas Toby? Don't know. Interesting.
How long did the son live in this house, do you know?
Thomas Toby died in 1714, and it stayed in the family for a period of time. Gosh, the last Toby was around the late 1700s, the last Toby, then it's been sold multiple times. In 1800, it was moved. It was bought by Reverend Burr across the street, who had the house moved up front. And he was very active in bringing children from Boston for care, and he started the academy down the street, so I'm wondering if the house was used for some of that purpose. But he turned that whole property where this is into a pony pasture, and that's what saved it. Now in archaeology, we're still living on top of it, so we don't have a lot of opportunities to do archaeology in the New England area. You go down south with failed communities like Flower Dew or Jamestown, well, it's all just rotted into the ground. You can do archaeology all day long. But here, the houses are still on top of the original sites people started with. And the plowing disperses artifacts everywhere. So whenever you're creating fields, everything gets dispersed. This has never been plowed. So I was told that this is the only intact first quarter 17th century home site known in the country, because everything is still there. And it's only a couple inches down, and you're getting on top of a lot of artifacts instantly. Yes, sir.
So the hole there is from when they moved the house, and then you said it was filled in.
Yes.
So a lot of the artifacts in there must be stuff that was scooped up and dropped in?
100%, yes.
So they're not
There was,
actually produced by the people in the house, they're...
it's all the refuse from around was just, I can only imagine, was pushed in over time. So the higher material was a lot of, there was a lot of animal bones, there was a lot of shell, there was, you could see different areas where they dumped a lot of sand over here, they dumped a lot of clay over here. But as you get further down into the site, you can get down to where it was the original flooring, and that's where you start finding like that buckle and a lot of other artifacts that were probably in situ from when the house was moved. But how soon was it filled, don't know. And remember, there's a book. There's a gentleman from England that came and visited the colonies in the 1600s, and he wrote a scathing report back to England about how grotesque the people were living here. Living in squalor, pigs everywhere, nothing is fenced in. It was an absolute mess, and it's absolutely true. You know, one of the things we talk about when we do our archaeology classes is you can tell where the windows were on a house that's missing, because you can dig in an area and you'll find a lot of broken shards where things were thrown out the window. And one of the things you can tell where the upstairs windows were because you find a lot of bedpans. Now, bedpans over a couple hundred years, one or two are going to get broken as they're out the window. And actually the nickname for they were called a thunderpot for the wrong reasons. I mean, it wasn't for what you're probably thinking. It was called a thunderpot because they weren't allowed to use it unless it was thunder and lightning and really bad weather. Think about this. Let's say you got 6 kids sleeping in one room, and someone wants to use the thunderpot. Your brother and sister are not going to be happy with you using that in there. And moms have never changed. Do you want your 6-year-old walking through the house with that thing in their hand? No. They say, you go out to the outhouse. So they were only used during thunder and lightning, during scary times. They weren't, that's why they call them a thunderpot. We actually have a thunderpot from the 17th century in our collection with the kids. Kids love the thunderpot story.
Has anyone ever done are there really Tobys from the original?
Oh gosh, they're everywhere.
Have they ever done ancestry?
There's a ton of it.
Any Indian blood?
So I had,
maybe there's so little now. But
I had a couple come up, an older couple come and visit me last summer. Wonderful people from Florida. And we went through all of this, and they had a ball. And I said, so, does anybody have a casino in your family? And they go, why do you ask? Well, I got a story for you. And I think the wife was the one that had the lineage to the Toby side, and she says, would make a lot of sense. But she said, you know, because this person looks like this person, that's not the right way to do it. But I haven't dared to ask any of the Tobys that I'm in contact with, hey, you want to go get a little pinprick and see what's going on? I think I'm pushing my luck a little. I'm going to stay away from that. Well, and I could be absolutely wrong about this, 100% wrong. The next scoop of dirt might tell me I'm wrong, but I'm looking for it. Why is there so much colonial and native artifacts in the same spot? And why are they really, really old? And you know, one of the things that you see a lot is smoking pipes. We love smoking pipes because everybody smoked. Everybody loved their tobacco. Kids smoked, wives smoked, mothers smoked, dads smoked, everybody smoked. And actually, if you had a cold, they had you smoke the pipe because it was warm and you were coughing up wets. Tobacco.
Tobacco.
Yep.
So the tobacco, we think of tobacco from Virginia.
Yep.
So somebody brought,
Right. Yep. Tobacco was a big product all over. Always has been. And it helps us because this is a part of a smoking pipe. This is the stem. And the stems were typically about this long. You'd hold the pipe down here and you have the long clay pipe. And they're made out of clay. And they're everywhere. They are everywhere. But what's nice about it is, over time, the draw, the hole in the middle of it, got smaller and smaller. They started off quite large because the tobacco was loose leaf and hard to keep lit. So you had to get a lot of air. And as it got more refined, you can see the holes getting smaller through manufacture because you'd want it to be smaller. And you can date these within 8 to 10 years because of the hole size. And so we have a lot of pipes, a lot of pipes, buckets of broken pipes. And some are in the 1620s. Well, why are those there? Did somebody have a 20-year-old pipe that they wanted to bring to sandwich? They don't last. They're made out of clay. They break. They break very easily. There's one great one, and I'll pass this around. Don't break it, please. You'll catch it with the light. I don't know if you can see it from there, but there's a face on it. And so when you're smoking it, it's looking at you. And this is called a Sir Walter Raleigh pipe. It's an effigy of Sir Walter Raleigh. Sir Walter Raleigh was the gentleman that brought tobacco back to Europe. And there's a fable where he says that, this is like the first commercial for smoking, that he fell off a boat and was eaten by an alligator, but that he was so, what's called tobacco juicy, that it spat him out. And he stood up and said, "Salvation from the weed." That was the first Sir Walter Raleigh. And anyway, if you're careful with this one, please. That belongs in a museum. It's still impacted too. It's surprisingly whole. That's probably 1640-ish. But you can see the face of Sir Walter Raleigh on the front. My daughter actually found that one. Yes, sir.
I have a two-part question. The first part is, was corn available back then? And if so, did they use the dried corn silk tobacco?
The corn was available back then. It's nothing like the corn we see today. It was very different in its look. And what was the second part of the question?
Did they dry the corn silk and use it like tobacco?
I haven't seen anything say that. I'm not saying that that didn't happen, but I haven't read that they were using it to smoke.
Back in southeast Missouri, they did.
They did.
A long time ago.
That's back east Missouri. Wow. Okay. That's new to me. I haven't seen that, at least not in any of my discoveries yet. We do find a lot of seeds on site, and we have those packaged also, so you can float them and get an understanding for the seeds. This is a typical bag. If you're doing a 1 meter square, and you go down every 10 centimeters, and you write down where did you find the first 10, second 10, third 10, fourth, fifth. By 6, you're starting to get a little version because this is a site that doesn't have a lot of foliage, so it doesn't have a lot of debris on top. And so you write down Toby site, unit S2, level 5, 40 to 50 centimeters, and date. That's a bag. And it is brick and shards and all kinds of things. The amount of bags I have is staggering. Staggering. Years and years and years of bags. And inside is from the site a bunch of still dirty artifacts. Look at that, there's a pipe right there. And it actually goes right to the bowl. And it's got a nice big bore to it. Still dirty, ready to go. Problem is, this needs to be processed, which is you dump the bag out, You identify the artifacts by location, and you put it into either a spreadsheet or a computer-generated location, and you can actually see where all of these artifacts go. I don't know how many bags I have. It would fill this table many, many times, front to back. It's endless amount of bags. I don't have time to do it. The best part of our archaeology is when you're scraping and you find something, you go, that's wonderful, and you put it in a bag. And you don't look at it again for years until it gets processed. In the processing of these artifacts, a whole different story comes out, because now the bags are talking to each other, and now they're all recorded in context. That's where the bigger story is, and I don't have time to do it. I need a team. So my wife and I, now we were really running strong before COVID hit. The schools said we can't come, obviously because of COVID. It shut it all down, and again, my administrator moved. So it's just been something I've been working with other archaeologists to get to the bottom of the cellar hole. We want to bring this back, because now I have a hole in the ground. Well, what are you going to do with that? Well, we're now talking about fundraising to put the original 12 by 18th structure back, which could be really neat, part of the ed program. Because now I have a basement. What am I going to do with the hole in the ground? I got to do something. But second is, I need to go on those bags. I need a processing center. So we're looking at trying to find one of those, like a construction trailer. We have enough room. We got 2.5 acres. We could tuck it into a non-seeable area and throw some solars on top for electricity. And we need to get this processed. And that's going to take years of processing these bags. And what an amazing story. Again, I'm just a curator today. This is all of our story. This might be an original site. Don't know yet. We're still working on that. But I have to now take it to the next level. Yes, sir.
Some of the artifacts that you found, like for example, the pipe, the beginning of the stem of the pipe, where it enters a person's mouth, is it ever possible maybe to obtain some DNA from that?
That's a great question. I have a lot of them where you can see the tooth marks. My guess, because it's called kaolin clay, my guess is that it wouldn't hold, but that's not to say it's not possible. We've all seen Jurassic Park. I don't know the answer to that, but that's a very interesting question. Very interesting question.
Have you ever explored these foundations with deep, deep pockets? When you look at PBS shows, you see all the foundation, you see the name, because the name is probably an industrialist.
Right.
Who's got so much money, he puts it into these things. You gotta find an industrialist with a foundation that's interested in archaeology with New England roots.
Right.
Have a winner.
That's where we have a board of trustees. Myself as the executive director, my wife, she's a recording secretary, and I have 3 others that make sure this is going in the right direction. We've been keeping this site relatively private because it's on private land, and not private in the sense that we don't want anybody to know about it, but we just don't want it to be a public opening yet. Now we're at the point where we've got far enough where we're ready to make this a very public statement. And I'm trying to find out more about Thomas Tobey, because if I can get one more little fact out of Thomas Tobey Sr., then that's going to be the story to attract those foundations. Again, we don't need a lot, but we do want the site protected in perpetuity. My wife and I, we own it. We've already put the land into the care and custody of the North Atlantic Archaeological Collaborative, which we run until somebody else does. That is a 501c public entity. So we want it to be used for archaeology in perpetuity, because there's a lot more digging that has to happen. Oh my, we could dig for another 30 years easy on a daily basis when the season's right.
Yeah, how do you preserve it? Did you just leave it open to the elements, or is it covered, or?
Well, right back there is the pond. And the wind likes to come right down that pond. So we've had the Upper Cape Tech students come over and build an A-frame, beautiful A-frame that went right over on top of the site. and the sheets of plastic, which are now not there. The winds absolutely destroyed it. So yes, we probably want to put some sort of a greenhouse solarium, better structure, because it just got ripped out, and of course, it's been a challenge. Yes, sir.
Is there anything in the old traditions of the indigenous people that might lead you in another direction, or,
So
for instance, up on the island in Maine or down here?
the Monhegan Island was not inhabited by the native population. It's too far out. This was, if the story holds that Thomas Toby Sr. took a native bride, let's just say that is the story, then she wasn't Wampanoag, she was probably Mi'kmaq tribe, which was up in that northern Maine type of an area. And they didn't like each other. In fact, they didn't like each other a lot because they killed each other. It was 1610, the Mi'kmaq tribe, which was a very strong warring tribe. 1610, they marched from the upper parts of Maine now all the way down to the tip of Provincetown and wiped out nearly every Wampanoag going. They took slaves, they took women, they killed like crazy. I think it was Governor Bradford said they recorded there's only about 400 Wampanoags left at that time. So they were having a real problem. And so at that point, in 1620, when the Pilgrims landed in Plymouth, it was an open site, and it wasn't inhabited. And they found corn stores, and well, why was that there? Well, some say it was because of the blight. You know, there was smallpox that was going around. True enough, I'm sure that did happen. But then also the Mi'kmaq tribe was brutal. And the Mi'kmaq tribe, after they marched back with all of their ill-gotten gains, the Narragansetts, which was west of Middleborough, they came over and they taxed the Wampanoags. And they said, every fish you catch, we get 50%. All the corn, we get 50%. They taxed them awful. I mean, awful, what the Narragansetts did to the Wampanoags. So when, all of a sudden a boat shows up with guns, why did the Wampanoags befriend them? Well, the tax stopped. I wasn't there, but that's all recorded history. We just don't talk about that one too often. But going back to going after the foundations, that's exactly what we've been talking about. We're ready to take it to the next level because now we have a structure that needs to be preserved and the story needs to be talked about, well, for the next 300 years. And we need to learn more. So yes, that's the next step.
Where's the position of the town of Sandwich in this? I mean, they gotta have a historical commission within the town, I'm
Yep.
guessing. And given the age of the town and the interests of the town, where do they stand in regards to your effort?
I've given presentations to them. I've talked to the library, the archivist, and it was actually the former archivist was instrumental in getting me a lot of the Toby information. So that they've been helpful, but we're at a point where there's not much they can do as an organization unless they wanted to partner up. But I was a selectman for many years in town, and I've been involved enough where I don't think I need those organizations. I need the next level of organizations to help with certain things, like the state. And the state's difficult because that's very closed. The state archaeology is only open for archaeologists to read their papers, which is maddening. Whereas I am not an archaeologist because I sat in front of a lectern for many years. I'm an archaeologist because I've done more field archaeology, as my archaeology friends say. I do more than 95% of the archaeologists in New England because of this site. There are endless years of true archaeology in the ground. So the state archaeological group is a challenge to work with. And if you do contact them, they try to then control. And you certainly don't want that to happen. This is still my home. I live here. I get kids. I don't need a black helicopter flying in. Not that that ever happens. Yes, sir.
This particular meeting right now is being filmed, and this is gonna be on YouTube, right?
Correct.
Yep.
So, will this have worldwide distribution where somebody might see this particular meeting over in Ireland or England or whatever and say, wow, I have some input that I can go ahead and call Tom about and.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so.
508-737-0244. I'm very open in public with this, and I actually started a show called Living with the Tobys. And I did multi-series with this before COVID with Agatha. She was filming it, and I talk about the artifacts and the story of the Tobys, and that went on and on and on. COVID comes, shuts everything down, and people call me all the time. When's the next story of Living with the Tobys? Because that's a Toby house. And we are talking about starting that back up also. But yes, if anyone's watching this, you got my number. Let me know.
Repeat it, please.
508-737-0244 or email tkeys, T-K-E-Y-E-S, at capecod.net. Send it on over. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot to share. I'm not even giving you a pinky nail of what we have for information. The artifacts alone, just to go through, is really remarkable, some of these things. To hold stuff that hasn't been out of the ground in hundreds of years, and you get a real nice connection to it.
When did the garage is that knocked down where the garage was?
The barn?
Oh, the barn, yeah.
The barn, yeah. The barn was knocked down probably turn of the 20th century, and we're actually putting a barn back there. So we know where it was.
Any digging around there or anything?
No, not so much there. No, we've been focused on the top of the hill. And if you look at the site is actually a knoll. We used to call it the knoll site before we realized it was a Toby site. And it was a raised knoll that overlooked a meadow that had a river running through it before it was dammed up and turned into a pond. And there's a freshwater source of water bubbling right next to it, coming right out of the ground. So you got fresh water, navigable waterway, and everybody built on top of a knoll because they were smarter than we are, and you don't need gutters, and it keeps the water out of your basement or your structure. So this is a really neat piece that I'd like you to hold. Feel that in your hand. Feel good?
Yes.
See the outside, see how smooth that is? Worked? That's a native stone that was used for burnishing. It's called a burnishing stone. You would use that to burnish pottery, but you would also dip it into paints and use it there was a multi-use tool, but that was a very personal tool. So was that Mrs. Toby's? Because that was found actually in this corner, very, very low. And I find that's probably one of the more wonderful personal pieces that's there. That was a multi-use tool that was loved and used for endless amount of time. Doesn't that feel right in the hand, though?
It does. It's like a worry stone.
It's absolutely fantastic.
Have you gotten your artifacts back yet?
Have I gotten my artifacts back? No. Oh.
Where are they?
Yes, sir.
So the native population, they did not have metal, is that correct?
They did.
Metal, they did.
No, they started. You remember there was fishing along Cape Cod from the late 1500s, and there was some trades going on, and they obviously wanted metals. Now they were still creating an awful lot of their points and knives out of stone, obviously. But yes, they were trading during the time when the two cultures were starting to clash. There was trade going back and forth.
But before the Europeans, they did not have metal.
No. You can't say never, but no, there wasn't any concentration of any metals that was in use, no. So does anybody want to dig? Reason I say that is you saw the picture I sent around with all the students, and there'll be 4 or 5 people around a hole, and they're digging, and archaeologists are going back and forth, going to the sifters, and it's an awful lot of fun. And the amount of people that said, "Can I come dig?" I go, "Well, yes." They said, how do I can herd 25 kids with some parental supervision and archaeologists. How do I herd all of you guys? I mean, I would love to do a dig, because we do a 2-hour experience where people come out with trowels and digging and talking and the stories. It's a fantastic time. you do lunch, and I'd want to do an adult level dig, but we haven't figured out how to corral a bunch of people that don't know each other, and not have a teacher that's yelling at them. So, but anyway, you would love it. Trust me, you would love it. Every student that comes out, they say this is the best field trip ever, and it can't get them to leave.
You'd have to get younger people, because if we went there, we could go get down, but we couldn't get up.
Do they have any colleges?
we just start throwing dirt on you while you're down there.
No, I have not had colleges, and I'll tell you why. Now, Brown has a great archaeology department. BU does. There's a lot of archaeology departments, and I've met a lot of people that says, "Oh, I went to school for archaeology," and never did anything with it because where do you find these jobs? And they always say, "Oh, I'd love to come over and explore and work with you." We target 7th and 8th grade students. I don't want to say pretty exclusively. 7th and 8th grade is when you get a lot of wonderment. And you have students that are, when they pull an artifact out of the ground, they're about 2 inches off the ground, just lit up, loving it. And we tried, because we were asked, we live in Sandwich, and I'm involved in Sandwich. They said, we had 3rd graders there one time. It didn't work out so well. And we had seniors there one time. They acted like 3rd graders. So we said, 7th and 8th grade is that, because they like the physical sciences, that social science. They love the discovery and that spark. And there's so many wonderful people that I've met that are absolutely, I'm going to say, it changed them, they say. They loved it. And I hate to say this out loud, but girls are such better archaeologists than boys. That's just been my experience. For whatever reason. I don't know about you guys, but were you a knucklehead when you were a young guy?
They have more patience.
Thank you. And
Mature.
hand dexterity. Maybe there's a lot of reasons for it. Who knows why? Hopefully we catch up over time. But no, I have not involved a university. We have talked about having university kind of take over in regards to the processing of all these bags. There's a lot of research that has to go into that, because there's so many artifacts in each bag, and there's glassware, really beautiful glassware for wine glasses, and there's a piece here, there's a piece in that bag, there's a piece in that bag. So when you're cleaning and processing and identifying, and then you're putting it into the computer, there are models where if you can picture in your head a knoll, right, in a house sitting on top, but not there, they can actually locate all of these artifacts, and you'll be able to twist that model 3D and see where the artifacts are. Now you can see trails. You can see where certain things were broken and scattered in certain areas. And again, that's telling its own story. That's a big deal. I prefer to get in the dirt and scrape and do that part, but we need some people with that fortitude to just dive in on these bags. And the way it's been explained to me is you can get a lot of volunteers, and you'll have a long table where the first person will be taking the bag, recording which the bag, dumping it out into a tray. Second person is the cleaner, and they're cleaning and making sure in a very delicate way that everything is laid out by category. Goes to the next person is drying and looking for other, and it goes to the fourth, and the first person is really someone that has some more experience on identification of artifacts and understanding it, and has maybe much more experience. But you need those 3 levels or you'll never get through it. And it's just a constant stream of processing. And that starts building its own story. And there's so many great things that we've taken out of the ground that I haven't seen in years because it's in a bag in my garage. And by the way, these are all over my house. Yes, sir.
Do you ever get rid of the contents of a bag once you've processed it?
We haven't processed it yet. I'm going to say no.
I'm just curious if somebody may not see something that somebody else might.
They'll be, once they're processed, they go back in the bag. And they'll be there, and they'll be recorded, and they'll be boxed, and it'll be cataloged, and it'll sit somewhere so that if let's say a university wants to study the Toby collection, they can start going through the same thing because we don't know where the scientists are going to lead us. They may get us to a point where they can do DNA based on the smoking pipes, and they're going to want to go through this to find out who was there. So yes, everything will be preserved and protected. We have not removed or sold or gotten rid of one piece. And everybody asks me, oh, did you find any coins? Well, in the 1600s, if you drop a coin, you're finding it. Because they would actually have a silver buckle and they would nip off a piece when they had to barter at a store. That's why you find buckles with corners missing, and they would nip off a piece of silver and they would weigh it. And that's how they paid for things. But you would not lose a coin.
Do archaeologists use video, for instance, looking at these things and then taking a picture of those, digitizing the pieces of material that you've found out? You get it digitized, the AI might be able to help with the whole thing.
100%. That's where getting all this into I'm going to say a navigable form versus just bags in my
Database.
right. You're 100% right. Can you imagine the story that's going to tell? Because now it'll instantly, and if you haven't used AI, it's before we. And this is my interpretation. Before we had calculators on our phones or in our pockets or on our desk, we did everything longhand, and it took a while. And if you look at Ford Motor Company, they had 3 levels of engineers drawing, right? And that's great. Then once computers came, they have a corner where they have 8 people doing it. Before they had hundreds. That's AI. AI is computing data at an alarming rate, incredibly fast. So all of these bags, if I put them all down into a spreadsheet, I'd have to try to go back and find that one from 1637, and then try to find this will, almost within seconds, will pop out that information and combine it all together and tell that story. So AI is good and bad in so many ways, but that could be good for research.
You need some interns, like.
I do.
And that's where I guess the college thing comes
Right.
in. Someone who's looking for an internship for a summer, get them really interested.
Yes.
And they're doing their PhD and they do a dissertation on this, and, I mean.
That's where I need to get one of those field trailers to get, so the interns will have somewhere to do it.
Somewhere to
Got to get out of my living room.
Right, yes.
Right. So there's a lot going on. I don't know how long you guys give me.
There are other people that are doing what you have gotten into here, that have done the same thing in Buffalo, New York, or
There
New
are,
Hampshire, or wherever it might be.
yeah, there's archaeology going on everywhere, especially down south. It's more rare in this area because we're still living on top of it. Nobody's moved away. And everything's been moved over time. If you want to know what your town looks like, go to the oldest cemetery. I say that, like if you go into Sandwich, you get some old cemeteries, and it's all this, hills and valleys. They say, well, why would they take the worst land to put the cemetery on? They didn't. That's what every place looked like. And then over time, the streetscapes go flat, the houses go, everything's been scrubbed over time. So archaeology is challenging because bulldozers have been everywhere, flattening out where your house is, flattening out where the roadway is, so we don't look like Sandwich from the 1600s at all. So I say go to a cemetery and walk it, and you go, oh, that was the entire town. It was all like that originally. So it's challenging. My site hasn't been plowed or flattened, so it survives. So is there people that are doing it? Yes. The last cellar hole found, I think it was up in Duxbury, where there was a structure, when they were doing it, half of it was gone. It was bulldozed out, but there was a corner that survived, which gave them enough information. And that was around the late 1950s. They found a cellar hole that they did that to. They're incredibly rare. Again, we're living on top of it. So where do you find these things?
Okay.
You get me the hook?
Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Do we have anything else?
Yes.